Good evening. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, September 19th, 2022. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg, and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note the starting time for our minutes as 7 p.m. It might be 7:01 p.m., but we'll call it 7 p.m. Councillors are in the council chamber in Listowel, joined by the clerk and some staff who are supporting this meeting. We are still supported by various digital technologies, and some staff, delegates, and experts will join us by web conferencing. Some members of the public have joined us tonight in the chamber. Welcome. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers, as able, are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. As noted earlier, tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream and the archived stream that follows. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behavior and or comments. Thank you. Welcome to all of those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors, staff, and delegations who will participate in this meeting. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the meeting. I have regrets this evening from Councillor Matt Richardson and Councillor Dave Johnston, who may show up later, but is certainly busy with farm chores at this time of the year. Let us move to item 2.1 on our agenda, pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect if not done to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Colleagues, do any of you have a declaration to make for this evening's meeting? We're not seeing any. That means that we can move forward. All participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly, serving as the chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technologies chat function. Remote participants are asked to generally maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize right to the floor. If, when I do so, recognize I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise. I invite continuing patience with our execution of these meetings. There are a few moving parts with our technologies that sometimes get complex. In fact, I was telling Councillor Duncan that sometimes I feel like an astronaut with the control panels up here. Regarding item 2.2 of our meeting, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda. I believe the clerk wishes to make an amendment, and so I'll invite her to suggest where this will change. And I believe your microphone 11, Clerk Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I've been advised that the delegate under item 4.3, Jamie Pinn, will not be attending this evening, so we can approve the agenda as amended to remove item 4.3.
Thank you, Clerk Klein. So Council, take note of a change in the delegate section of our meeting this evening. I have a resolution for our consideration as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved as amended. Can I call on a mover? Thank you, Councillor Anstead, and our seconder will be Councillor Duncan. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they're believed to be non-contentious, yet they do require and warrant Council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 7 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? I'm not seeing any show of hands at this point, so I have a motion for our consideration as follows, that consent items 3.1 to 3.7 be received for information and the minutes of the September 12th, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell and Deputy Mayor Kellum will serve as our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. At this time, it's proposed that we move to agenda item number 4. Tonight, we have 2 delegations to council. I remind our delegations that a total time of 10 minutes per delegation is permitted, and that includes both presentation time and providing this council with opportunity to ask a few questions should they so desire. The delegate is to present on the topic declared on the submitted request for delegation form, and deviations from the topic are not generally acceptable to the chair or this council. First, as item 4.1, we have a delegation from Donna Power, who represents a group called Ontario Puppy Mills. Stop This Now. Ms. Power is, I believe, remote. Oh, no, Ms. Power is here. Welcome. The floor is yours at this time.
Thank you.
Let me just adjust the camera.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Really looking forward to having a conversation going forward with you. Want to give you a very brief bio of myself. I have worked in companion animal rescue and welfare for over 30 years. For the past 5 years, I have focused my attention on Ontario's commercial dog breeding business to help raise public awareness of how vulnerable these animals are to neglect, mistreatment, and inhumane conditions. As well, how our federal, provincial, and municipal laws and bylaws can and must provide better protections, enforcement, transparency, and accountability. Last year, I spent several months working on the kennel bylaws in the municipality of Wellesley. I conducted a gap analysis between the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association Code of Practice for Canadian Kennels and the Wellesley bylaws. The gap analysis made it very clear where the Wellesley laws fell short. The council was initially very closed to making any changes, especially brought forth by an outsider. I was villainized quite heavily as an outsider and labeled an activist. But in time, the new kennel bylaws, they were passed. We got about 80% of the recommendations through. And there's still some improvements needed, but very pleased with what was brought forward and voted on last September. I wish to be clear, I am here to work with you. I'm not here to work against you. My focus is on the animals and improving their quality of life through the municipality's comprehensive bylaws, meaningful and transparent oversight. My hope is that the information provided will open the door to conversations about how, as municipal leaders, you can bring forth bylaws that lets it be known that North Perth will no longer be welcome to unethical breeders. As Dr. Phil McGraw said, you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. This area of the province has long been known as Puppy Mill Central. Looking at the current bylaws of North Perth, and I've gone through them extensively, there's really nothing in these bylaws that protect the animals in your 17 licensed kennels. Oversight seems to be non-existent, and there are undoubtedly many more unlicensed breeding facilities around the municipality that are off the radar and not known. Dogs are obviously unable to ask for help and tell them that they're not being cared for properly. They need an advocate, and I am more than happy to be that advocate. You have the power and responsibility to make changes to ensure adequate care, enforcement, and quality of life. In today's age, there's really no excuse to claim you are not aware of the horrors of puppy mills or thinking it would not or could not happen here. By not providing adequate bylaws, you are indicating that you choose to close your eyes and hope for the best. Knowing of these horrors and not bringing forth the needed protections is simply unacceptable. This municipality is quite literally rolling out the red carpet to unethical dog breeding operations. While public pressure mounts to stop puppy mills, North Perth continues to offer a safe haven to unethical breeders who continue to ply their inhumane trade. When I refer to commercial dog breeding, I am not referring to ethical breeders who breed 1 to 3 dogs of one specific breed. These breeders invest heavily in the physical and mental health of their breeder dogs and of the puppies. They ensure their dogs' bloodlines are pure and healthy and the dogs are bred ethically. These breeders are very diligent regarding who may purchase one of their dogs. They provide a broad health guarantee and will stand by that dog for the lifetime of that animal. Many ethical breeders do not realize a profit at all from this undertaking. When I refer to commercial dog breeding, I am referring to breeders who factory breed large numbers of dogs for the sole purpose of making money. They sell to whomever wants to buy one, and often at prices higher than the ethical breeders noted above. These businesses are referred to as puppy mills. These are unethical breeders who breed in a manner that optimizes quantity over health and well-being. Overhead costs such as appropriate vetting, health and safety, comfort, ventilation, heating and air conditioning, they are kept to a minimum. These breeders also sell entire litters to individuals who are known as brokers, who in turn sell to the unsuspecting public who do not know and are not told of the true origin of their puppy. During times of heightened market demand, like seen during the COVID period, these breeders took in more breeder dogs to heighten output and then in turn raised their prices substantially to take advantage of the increased interest. Never before has Ontario had seen so many occurrences of the deadly parvo and distemper viruses. For an unethical breeder, whether licensed or not, everything in regards to conditions, care, and quality of life are kept at a minimum. Minimum space, comfort, vetting, concern for the dog's well-being, mental and physical, minimal interaction with humans and other dogs, minimum quality of food, minimum access to fresh air, natural light, exercise, enrichment, and socialization. Another stark difference between ethical and unethical breeders is transparency. The ethical breeder opens up their business fully to prospective buyers. They are proud of their property and how the dogs are cared for. In contrast, the unethical breeder, the puppy miller, controls what the public is allowed to see. The public is not permitted to see where the dogs live. They don't want the public to see that there is no area for the dogs to play or socialize. There are no comfy beds or toys. The viewing of puppies and perhaps the mother dog is conducted away from where the dogs actually live. They could be in a separate called viewing room or perhaps on a grassy part of the property. This secrecy, this underground tax-free economy, the poor conditions and the lack of oversight, as well as the lack of consumer protectionism, exists because governments at every level allow it to happen. You, the municipal government, is the first line of defense. I am sad to say this council has failed to protect the consumer, the reputation of this wonderful community, and most importantly, the animals whose lives are in your hands. The public also has a role to play in not being complacent and by ensuring that their elected officials know that this is not acceptable. It does not accurately reflect who they are, and they are looking for candidates who do reflect the community, and they want the right thing done. In the past 10 months, more and more older puppies and breeder dogs are being dumped in desolate locations because the inventory now exceeds the demand, and the mill owner simply no longer wants to pay for their upkeep. The above occurrence is taking place in your licensed and unlicensed kennels in this municipality right now. The last decade has seen massive growth in public awareness and outcry against puppy mills. Demands are increasing on civic leaders to step up and provide the legislation and strong municipal bylaws to provide protections and standards of care for these animals. It was brought to my attention that North Perth has a checklist of standards and care that is used one time at the time of issuance of the license. Having a list of standards held outside the bylaws is worthless and unbinding. It provides the appearance of oversight, but it has no powers whatsoever. As I mentioned, the current animal control bylaws for North Perth has virtually nothing in regards to standards of care, health and safety, and well-being. Animal control and bylaw officers look to the council to approve bylaws, to direct the level of oversight and enforcement, and by all accounts, there are none. Their hands are tied unless you provide them the tools of meaningful bylaws, adequate enforcement, training and funding, and finally substantial fines for non-compliance, up to and including their license being revoked. With all due respect, North Perth Council has failed in this regard. I understand that animal control is a municipal expense that generates very little revenue through licensing and fines. I do understand that municipal budgets are very tight and that councils are seeking ways to trim their budgets. But I put forth that not acting is a moral failure, and that one that can be addressed if the will is there. I am asking you tonight to have the will to improve the lives of these animals and protect consumers. Looking at your North Perth Community of Character initiative, there were a number of critical qualities that stuck out: integrity, responsibility, courage, compassion, and empathy. What I am asking for tonight is for this council to embrace those traits and create animal care bylaws that this community can be proud of and that they will stand behind because they do reflect who you are. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Power. I think you have a colleague with you or
Yes, I do.
an ally with you. Maybe we should hear from your colleague and then we can ask questions jointly.
Very good.
If that's all right.
Okay, thank you.
I think that might be procedurally the right thing. So as item 4.2, we have a further delegation from Karen Thompson-Harry, also from the same group, Ontario Puppy Mills Stop This Now. Ms. Thompson-Harry, you have 10 minutes. The floor is now yours.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Karen Thompson-Harry, and I first want to thank you for allowing us time to speak to you tonight about something that is dear to my soul: puppy mills and kennel bylaws, unethical breeding. While I'm not an animal activist, I admire Donna for the role that she has taken on. I am a lifelong animal lover, like I'm sure many of you are as well. I currently have 2 Great Danes and a Corgi at home. Which reminds me, rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth. I also own horses, and many, many moons ago, I bought a horse from a breeder in Listowel. I was called to the Bar of Ontario in 1992. I practiced family and equine law for more than 25 years, and I'm currently retired from the practice of law. From the website for North Perth, quote, "The municipality of North Perth is a growing community. The rural and urban areas that united as one to make North Perth have shaped us to be the strong and dynamic community that we are today." End of quote. Allow me to add, a community where you can operate a puppy mill with no consequence, where you can breed dogs with little to no municipal oversight, consequence, or accountability. Welcome to North Perth. North Perth has a rather undesirable reputation, that being one of the worst communities in the province of Ontario for allowing or turning a blind eye to puppy mills and having weak kennel bylaws. So what can be done? It would be nice and easy to say, let's ban all puppy mills. But unfortunately, I know it's not that easy. It is a challenge to even identify where all the puppy mills are located, let alone close them all down. What can be done in North Perth is to improve the standards of care via the kennel bylaws, introducing greater oversight, enforcement with stronger and consistent penalties for enforcement. Make North Perth an unwelcoming community for unethical breeding and puppy mills. The impact of unethical and unregulated breeding goes far beyond those poor puppies and their parents who suffer and often die or live with health complications. The impact extends to the families, the children who fall in love with these puppies immediately and have to watch them suffer or die. The impact extends to the vets who have to treat them and watch them suffer and die needlessly. Let's not forget that veterinarians are more than twice as likely to have suicidal thoughts than other Canadians. I want to share with you the 5 freedoms. They are internationally accepted standards of care to affirm and safeguard the right of a living being to humane treatment. These freedoms originated in the United Kingdom in the 1960s and are the cornerstone of animal welfare today. 1, freedom from hunger and thirst by ready access to fresh water and diet to maintain health and vigor. 2, freedom from discomfort by providing an appropriate environment, including shelter and a comfortable resting area. 3, freedom from pain, injury, or disease by prevention or rapid diagnosis and treatment. 4, freedom to express normal behavior by providing sufficient space, proper facilities, and company of the animal's own kind. And 5, freedom from fear and distress by ensuring conditions and treatment which avoid mental suffering. Currently, in North Perth, the impact of weak kennel bylaws and limited enforcement suggests that animals kept in their licensed kennels are not worthy of these 5 freedoms. And the dogs in their unlicensed kennels are invisible, forgotten, and suffering. The third edition of the Code of Practice for Canadian Kennel Operations was released in 2018 by the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association. To quote the rationale from their website, quote, "To mirror the changing values towards animals that have emerged over the past decade, dogs are now recognized by the public and by some legislative bodies as sentient beings that have capacity to feel, perceive, and experience. This recognition has influenced the way people interact with dogs and the standard of care expected to be provided for them, whether a dog's role is that of a family member, working dog, or a dog kept for breeding and show." End of quote. These codes drill down into how specifically the 5 freedoms may be reflected via the use of legislation and municipal bylaws. The 5 freedoms is the what, and the codes are the how. Using the CVMA Code of Practice as a guide, this council has the ability to create kennel bylaws that will ensure that licensed kennels in this municipality afford the dogs the 5 freedoms. These codes will provide the checklist your bylaw officer will use when conducting inspections and, if needed, identifying failures to comply and in laying fines. Many Ontario municipalities have made a conscious decision to afford dogs in their licensed kennels the protection, dignity, and quality of life that the 5 freedoms and CVMA codes of practice identify as critical. The town of Georgina is one of those municipalities that responded when residents made it clear they did not want their community to be associated with unethical dog breeding. And the link is attached in the written presentation. Here are some critical elements they added to their kennel bylaws. A maximum number of dogs allowed. Without this, it opens the door to mammoth breeding operations and a criminal element. Licensed applicants are required to provide a clean police check and provide at the time of license application and at annual renewals. Applicants are required to show proof of harmonized sales tax registration. All dogs must be microchipped. This ensures traceability and record keeping. All kennels are required to keep clear and transparent records. For example, vet and vaccine records, a complete list of all dogs on the premises, breeding records, sale records, purchasers. An annual inspection performed by animal control with completed checklist report filed with the municipality. Strict daily requirements around dogs' access to fresh air, natural light. Dogs to have daily access to exercise, socialization, enrichment, as is recommended by the CBMA. Acceptable heating, cooling temperature ranges within the kennel to ensure the dog's health, comfort, and well-being. Clear guidelines around cleanliness and sanitary protocols. Controls regarding ethical and healthy breeding ages and cycles. Health and safety bylaws around fire, health outbreak containment protocols. The leadership of North Perth, i.e. the local elected officials, have the power to change the reputation from a community that does not prioritize the health well-being. Not only the dogs, but the people and families that buy these puppies or the vets who treat these puppies or dogs, to a community that not only has a compassion for all living creatures, but takes steps to protect those that cannot protect themselves. Step number 1, implement strong kennel bylaws. Make North Perth a community that does not support puppy mills. And step number 2, enforce those bylaws consistently. The cost of enforcement can be significant when puppy mills are known to exist, as there is more pressure put on the municipality to enforce. When there are strong bylaws that are known in the community to be enforced with consistency and penalties that are sufficient to discourage unethical breeding, the enforcement costs go down. Enforcement becomes routine as people comply. For example, if speeding was never enforced on our highways, I suspect we would have a lot more speeding. Impaired driving is another example. Without consistent enforcement that is sufficient enough to deter the behavior, I believe the unwanted behavior would continue. Just to reiterate what Donna mentioned earlier, having requirements and checklists that are not included in the municipal bylaws does not warrant any consequences if not followed. They are not binding or enforceable. I do want to clarify some misconceptions that we as animal welfare advocates hear often. They're shared by much of the public and governments. First, the impression that anyone licensed by the Canadian Kennel Club has to meet certain standards, and that the Canadian Kennel Club oversees their membership. Therefore, if you're a CKC registered member, you can be trusted. That's not quite true. The CKC does no vetting of their members or prospective members. Many puppy mill breeders and brokers intentionally seek CKC membership as they feel this lends them a label of legitimacy and will make the public feel comfortable when they buy their puppies from them. The Ontario Animal Welfare legislation, the PAWS Act, will provide the needed protections, so the municipal animal control bylaws are not important. That's not true. The PAWS Act is woefully inadequate and is being challenged in court by multiple groups. Right now in Ontario, all that is required is food, water, and shelter. There are 0 standards that the CVMA Code of Practice recommends. 3, there's a serious misconception often held by residents that if a municipality licenses a kennel, then that kennel is held to a high standard and is inspected regularly. Unfortunately, this is not true in many municipalities, North Perth being one of them. Finally, in closing, if North Perth does not implement kennel bylaws that discourage unethical breeding, then I believe its reputation will continue to be tarnished by the stain of puppy mills in the community, and potentially one day a significant lawsuit could result from willful blindness. If North Perth adopts their bylaws to be consistent with CVMA guidelines for kennels and enforces them consistently, then I believe your community will be seen as a compassionate community to raise a family. It will truly be strong and dynamic. And I want to leave you with 2 quotes that are meaningful to me. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate action of its members. Coretta Scott King. And finally, Mahatma Gandhi said, the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. Thank you. And I think Donna and I will be open to any questions or discussion. She's the expert.
All right, let's bring back Ms. Power, if you'd like to join us for a moment at the podium with your colleague. I'd entertain a few questions. We've had our 20 minutes here, but let's see if there are any questions from councillors about these matters. Anything, Councillor Seiler? Let me just get your microphone here.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. It is sad. I've gone through this in the last 2 weeks. I've been called by a taxpayer, and I went back and seen what was going on. It is happening in our community, and it's very disturbing. So I didn't really know how to handle it, so I just called our bylaw officer lady, and she came around, and I don't know what the laws are that we have in place or how to deal with this, but I asked her to look after it and work with the people beside the place that this is going on. And it happened to be a house that was rented to a person bought the house and was rented to another family, and the family that is renting it now is put the puppy mill there. And so it is in our backyard. So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, and I feel that we need to address what you're saying to us, and hopefully we can make it better for everybody.
Thank you so much.
So that's what I did. I called our bylaw officer, and I don't know what the laws and regulations are. So I don't know if she has contacted any staff or whatever, but she is well aware of what's going on. So that's just one.
Yep.
So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seiler. Councillor Andreessen is next.
Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I actually communicate with you, Donna, over email, and we thank you for bringing this to our attention. And we've had some conversations and looking forward to some reports from Chief Pape, who's in charge of our bylaw enforcement. And she's here this evening, and I know is working on it diligently on our behalf. And your concerns that you have raised will help us to look at what we need to do in terms of updating our bylaws so that we can have more compliance and more safety for these wonderful pets out there. So thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Further, Councillor Anstett.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and thank you again, ladies, for your presentation. Very, very informative. You just talked about it briefly, I think, just in terms of breeders that are operating legally. In terms of statistics, do you have numbers for what it looks like in Ontario of these puppy mills that are existing that aren't operating ethically?
We do know, and this is by animal welfare advocates and reporting into PAWS, that between north of the 401, west of the 400, south of Georgian Bay, east of Lake Huron, there are over 125 puppy mills. That's what we know. That's what we know. There are so many that are underground that we will never find them. We'll never find them. And keep in mind, these are non-tax paying businesses. So the average mill, I did a whole bunch of, I'm kind of a numbers nerd, so I kind of massaged a bunch of numbers based on when a municipality did give a ceiling, like 35 dogs. Like North Perth has nothing right now. So a mill could have 100 dogs right now, and there's no issue, right? So I did some numbers. The average miller, and I just averaged numbers, they made between $800,000 and $1.2 million a year tax-free. That is shocking. Totally unregulated, totally black market, under the radar, no one sees them.
And I think it's really come to the attention during the pandemic because people are doing this a lot more. And what's happening is these puppies are being sold for much more than they were before, pre-pandemic,
Yep.
and they have parvo. They have diseases, which has brought it to the public's attention because they're taking to the vet, and it's so contagious that it's just going crazy, and there's nothing anybody can do. So that, the breeders are saying, we'll bring the puppy back, we'll give you another one. That's not the solution. But that's what I think is really garnering a lot of public attention right now. And you see these stories in the paper, and it just tears your heart out.
Ontario has never had an outbreak issue of parvo distemper. It just doesn't happen here. The way we're operating right now is almost like the southern U.S. Mm-hmm. Our shelters over the years have never been near capacity. They are brimming at capacity right now because people are going back to their post-COVID lives. They realize, oh, this is why I never got a dog, because they doesn't sit with my lifestyle. Dogs are getting dumped. They're getting surrendered to shelters. When the shelter is full and they can't take the surrendered dog, that dog ends up at a dog park tied up to a tree and left. So our shelters are just brimming with, and it's a crisis. Most animal advocates will say we're at a crisis in Ontario we've never seen.
Any others? Any further questions at this point? Deputy Mayor Kellen?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and thank you for the presentation. A question that I had, other than the circumstance that Councillor Seiler has brought to us, can you share how are you finding out about these puppy mills that are located, especially in North Perth?
Normally what I do is I reach out to the clerks. First of all, I ask for how many puppy mills or how many breeding kennels do you have? Licensed kennels do you have? I get a number. So North Perth, there's 17. They can't disclose addresses, names. So then at times I will file an FOI, a Freedom of Information Act, and I'll get it that way. Most of the time, my list that I've been building for about 5 or 6 years, it's by people reporting, I bought off that property, because we're very, on social media, we have a couple of groups, and I'll say, if anybody has bought a puppy that you're questioning the origins, or that puppy was sick, or anything, please reach out, and that's how we're building that list. And then we track it right back to the vet. Let's see, this is how we identified a veterinarian that services North Perth, by the way, and he's actively under investigation by the College of Veterinarians of Ontario right now. He's a mobile vet. He services all 17 kennels here in North Perth. The dogs, the occurrence of parvo and distemper, like I said, has gone through the roof. And because the puppies are not truly being vaccinated, they're being sold vaccination certificates, but the puppies are not being vaccinated. Because the vet will say, if that puppy received a vaccination, they wouldn't have gotten parvo. So it's just, it's so many things. As you start researching things, you lead to that, and then you're constantly going down rabbit holes, and that's how we've compiled our information.
Okay, Councillor Duncan, I'll let you in here too. Just let me find your mic. There it is.
Did I hear you correctly when you said this vet services all 17 kennels in the municipality of North Perth?
From what I understand, all 7 of the 17, the ones that are unethical breeders. Because no ethical breeder would use this veterinarian. He's well known. So we can't really, it's very hard to identify. I've identified clearly, and I think I sent, Mayor, I think I sent you a list of ones that we know. I think there was 8 on the list or so. If not, maybe a little less. I'm not sure. Is it? And we're constantly building the list as we find it. And it's by people saying, I bought a sick puppy from there. My dog got parvo. And that's how we build it. It's just by interviewing people that reach out to us. We've got quite a large membership all over Ontario. So people are reaching out. They're posting in their community groups. Has anyone bought a sick puppy? Please contact, Ontario Puppy Mill. And then we start building that directory.
Anyone further? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Mayor Todd. And through you, thank you, ladies, for your presentation. It's very important in our conversations. And as you just mentioned, in terms of the social media and so on, is that, as I understand, certainly in your presentation, puppies that come from these places, puppy mills and so on, the puppies are sold far and wide. And frankly, it's not unusual that they may not even be sold within our own community, so therefore we wouldn't know. So your networks, I think, will be of great assistance in terms of establishing where the extent of the problem and perhaps even where some of those problems are from. So I'm sure Council will have a conversation later in terms of direction, but I'm certainly in support of reaching out and utilizing your expertise to help us, if Council wishes, to address our issues as you've pointed out in our bylaw. Thank you very much.
I know one good thing that I don't think neither one of us put it on the presentation is, but licensing brokers. Licensing brokers. So when a broker comes in and buys an entire litter, 9 puppies, they take those 9 puppies, they walk away. Right now, there is nothing for traceability because you don't microchip, 0 traceability. Because you don't record who the purchasers are, no accountability. So when someone in, let's say, Hamilton says, I bought a sick puppy and I bought it off this guy in Brampton and I don't know what happened, there's no traceability, because if that dog had a microchip, we can go, that dog was bought at this location. And it's so much easier to trace. And that is accountability. And we all have to do it together, though. We all have to come together and say, this is what we need to do.
Thank you. I think we'll discontinue the conversations at this point. I can advise that this council did pass a resolution at its last meeting, I believe, that directed staff to explore the issues more in depth. And I think you will hear from representatives of staff further, because this council does value that you have some expertise in this matter and brought forward a useful and insightful presentation. I certainly do want a sense of scope, and I think that will come forward through the staff in due course. So I believe, in looking at my colleagues around the room, that there is some will to move this forward. That was expressed through our resolution, and we look forward to your collaboration with our staff people on this one.
Well, thank you so much. Really lovely to see this reception. It's wonderful. So,
thank you for coming. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I did something with the cameras, and I don't know whether you can bring back the document view and the eScribe view at your table, or whether I'm supposed to do something with it. But I'm a little uncertain about what I'm supposed to do. So if we need Simon, we might need to page him at this point. Okay, we will move forward to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. We have no reports tonight from the CAO's department, but certainly, the work continues, as everyone knows, and we're appreciative of our staff in that department for all that they do in ensuring that our operations are efficient and effective across the organization. Next up is item 5.2, reports from the strategic initiatives portfolio. For item 5.2.1, our manager of strategic initiatives, Jessica McLean, brings forward a report outlining state of progress against the corporation's strategic plan and 2022 departmental business plans, and makes recommendations for the development of the next strategic plan for the next council. Thank you, Mr. Simon, our expert. There we go. Got it. Yay. It's wonderful to have support. So at this point, I think we'll call on Ms. McLean for the report that has been prepared, and I believe she's remoting in through web conference. So, Ms. McLean, welcome to our meeting. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. I have tonight for you an information report sharing progress on the 2019 to 2022 North Perth Corporate Strategic Plan, which was adopted by Council in January 2020. As the end of the current term of Council and the strategic plan period approaches, staff determined it necessary and relevant to complete an audit of the strategic plan to track our progress. A comprehensive progress report is attached to the Council report. The report identifies the status of each action and project included in the plan and shares progress comments from departments who are listed to lead each action and project. Although the COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted the focus of municipal operations and staff throughout 2020 and 2021, a large portion of the actions and projects included in the Strat Plan have either been completed, are ongoing, or are planned to be completed in 2022 or 2023. For example, of the 97 projects included in the plan, 19 are complete and 11 are planned to be complete in 2022 or 2023. 52 projects are currently ongoing. Though not listed in the report, I'd like to note that approximately half of these 52 ongoing projects are ones that, once initiated, require perpetual staff attention and therefore will never be labeled as complete. There are 15 actions that have been deferred and or not started for various reasons, and these are color-coded gray in the audit report. It's important to note that departments have initiated and completed many initiatives or projects in addition to those included in the Strat Plan during the plan term. These have been accounted for in the annual department business plans, and you will note some examples listed in the Council report. Based on the results of this audit, it is advised that municipal departments move forward with the development of 2023 department business plans in conjunction with the 2023 annual budget process. The business plans will capture the strategic plan actions and projects that are currently ongoing, planned for 2022 but may not be completed this year, and planned for 2023. It is also advised that staff begin the planning process for the development of a new strategic plan. Like the process used to develop the current plan, staff believe it would be beneficial to collect the input of both the outgoing and incoming terms of Council on current and future strategic priorities. We are currently organizing a strategic planning session for Council this fall and provide more details once they are finalized. In addition to the progress on the strategic plan, this report includes information to answer questions from Council that were asked this past July when the 2022 department business plans were received. Council had requested an update on the organizational structure implementation and additional staff positions included in the 2022 budget, as well as projects in the 2022 department business plans that may not be completed this year due to staff capacity. Details are included in the report, but I would like to highlight that significant staff turnover and transitions in various departments have impacted capacity and work plans in 2022. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLean. Colleagues, any questions at this point about the strategic plan report that's been delivered? Okay. We're not seeing any hands raised, Ms. McLean. That's a very good sign, I think. Report must be perceived as very comprehensive, and we appreciate that. So I have a resolution for our attention as follows. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the Strategic Plan Audit Progress Report as information. Councillor Behrens will move this, thank you, and a seconder will be Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And Councillor Rothwell indicates manually that he's in favor, which means that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. McLean. Always a pleasure to have you at our meetings, and a very thorough report. Much appreciated.
Thank you, council. Have a good night.
We now move to our 4 items emanating from the Corporate Services Department as item 5.3.1. Council is asked to take first steps towards the 2023 budget by appointing a chair and a vice chair of the 2023 Budget Committee, and to authorize the release of the annual survey of residents. We, of course, acknowledge that a small thing called an election could disrupt these appointments for the next council, but we'll let that unfold as it will. I believe, do we have Ms. Belfour with us? Ms. Belfour is with us. So Ms. Belfour is connecting remotely, and we'll call on her to speak to this matter. Welcome, Ms. Belfour.
Thank you, Mayor Todd and Council. Good evening. So as Mayor Todd indicated, the election is soon upon us, and with the inauguration on the 21st of November, not until the 21st of November, we would like to establish the budget chair and vice chair so we can move forward with the 2023 budget process. In collaboration with the Manager of Communications and Perth County Manager of Finance and Treasury, we have put together a 2023 budget survey in draft for the public circulation, and have input on both process and expenditures for North Perth and Perth County. So once appointed, the chair and vice chair would review this draft public circulation, and it would be proposed and with a closing date of November the 14th. The 2023 budget format will be presented electronically this year for council to review and for the public. The overall look of the presentation will change somewhat with our new budget software. And with the new chart of account structure, it will look much different, but all of the numbers will be there for presentation. The budget process is a significant financial planning tool, which gives direction to staff and provides budget information for the public. This time I would appreciate the appointment of the vice chair and chair of the 2023 budget committee.
Thank you, Ms. Belfour. Council, it has been our custom to promote the vice chair to chair over the last few years that I've been mayor. So, and I think it precedes that, Councillor Behrens, I trust, to some degree. So, Councillor Andreessen has served as vice chair in 2022. Again, we all know there's an election, but would you be willing to serve at this point as the chair of the 2023 Budget Committee?
Yes, I'd love to serve in that capacity. The election process deems that possible. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So, anyone else wishing to serve as chair? Okay. Councillor Anstett, was that an indication that maybe you're going to be the vice chair next year?
Thank you, Mayor Casey. Yes, if that was the will of council, I'd be honored to do that. Thank you.
That would be wonderful. And I see our colleagues all nodding our heads and smiling. And there's a certain amount of going on in the room as well, I suspect. So thank you, Councillor Anstedt, for that. So we have a few resolutions that bear on this matter. Actually, one resolution with a few parts. So let's go as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth appoints Leanne Andreessen to be the chair of the 2023 Budget Committee, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth appoints Neil Anstedt to be the vice chair of the 2023 Budget Committee, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves for circulation the public survey with regard to the 2023 budget. Councillor Behrens? Oh, sure, yeah.
Yes, I'm certainly willing to move it. But the way the last line reads, like it was mentioned in the presentation, that the chair and vice will review the public survey before it's released. Or that's what my ears heard.
Typically, that's what happens.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, I think
Okay, so it just says, okay, it doesn't really speak to
right.
that they're going to approve it, but the understanding is there that the chair and vice will take a look at it before it is released. Okay, that's fine.
Does that seem okay with the clerk in terms of proceeding on that basis? That we have a general understanding and don't need to include it in the resolution, that the chair and vice chair will have their say on that survey draft before it's released? Is that okay?
So I think that's fine.
Okay, so thank you for catching that. Councillor Rothwell, you'll serve as a seconder. Councillor Behrens, you said you'd move that, so let's document it that way. Moved and seconded. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that was a quickly accumulated unanimous. I think everyone is grateful that it's carried and that we have our chair and vice chair for the upcoming budget. Thank you very much, councillors, for your willingness to serve. We appreciate that very much. All right. Ms. Belfour, do you continue? I think so, right? You're on for our next item as well. So for item 5.2, and in a sign of optimism about the trajectory of the pandemic, finance staff is recommending that council restore its usual late penalties and interest rate policies for unpaid but due property taxes. Ms. Belfour, you're still with us. You're still smiling. Please take the floor and tell us more about this one.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Council, once again, report in front of you will be to resume regular penalty and interest charges on property taxes. So it's hard to believe back in September 2014, September 14th, 2020, Council was presented with the information regarding the property tax exemption option due to the COVID emergency. And so at that time, Council changed the interest rate per month of 1.25%. Or from 1.25% to 0.375% per month. And with the emergency being lifted as of April the 6th, 2022, it is felt that we should resume back to the 1.25% per month and reinstate that penalty and interest. Our current taxes receivable for August were lower than last year, so I do believe this is a good opportune time and allowed people to catch up on their taxes with that 0.375% interest, and I feel this is a good time to look at it again. And legislatively, 1.25% per month is currently the max amount to be chargeable. And yes, I guess that's where we sit. If council would like to do so.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Belfour. Questions or comments? First comments, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and through you, thanks, Becky, for the report. I'm just wondering if the timing is enough for our public, if council agrees with this. I think you're looking at October 1st implementation date, so I know we're coming up. There was the quarterly installments, I think they're just have gone out recently or are going out. Does this give enough time for the public to understand our reinstitution of the penalty to October 1st? Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Belfour, comments on the timing?
September 21st is our next due date, so there will be a interest of 0.375 on the current outstanding balance of the September 21st, and then this would be implemented on October 1st. We would do a blitz in social media, on our website, that kind of thing, to notify people that it's going back to the 1.25%. I mean, if council would like to hold off a little longer, next tax bills don't go out to February of next year. That's when we do our full letter and information package that goes out with the bills that catches everyone. So the only recourse of getting that word out is social media, the paper, website, that kind of thing. So.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. Thanks, Becky, through the mayor, for that answer. I think as long as, if council agrees and if we do follow the communications as outlined by yourself there, I think that should give our public enough opportunity to make decisions or at least be aware of the change if council agrees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions or first comments from council? All right, I'm not seeing any, so let's have a look at the resolution that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth resumes to the pre-COVID penalty and interest charge of 1.25% on municipal property taxes receivable to be effective October 1st, 2022. Can I call for a mover of this one? Councillor Seiler, thank you, and Councillor Anstett will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Belfour. Glad to see you at our meeting tonight. Let's move on to item 5.3.3. Council is presented with a report pertaining to delayed work by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, or MPAC, to keep astride the assessments for properties being occupied and built since the year 2020. I'll call on Frances Hale, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, to provide an introduction to the matter. I see that Mr. Wilkin is here as well, so Ms. Hale, if you need to call your expert, we're happy to have Mr. Wilkin join us too. Ms. Hale, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. If I might just take your lead, Mayor Kaysenberg, I would like to turn the meeting or the conversation over to Bruce this evening, and he can provide council with further information and answers. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Wilkin.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. I'm going, excuse me, I'm not going to read my report in detail. I imagine you have had a chance to review it already, but I will attempt to answer any questions you may have after I'm finished. I am aware of how difficult it has been during the COVID restrictions over the past 2.5 years for the assessment people to make field inspections and such. But we have really fallen behind, and it's been a concern of mine when I see the return of the 2021 assessment roll, which was delivered in December of last year, and the amount of stuff that had not been picked up at that point in time. This report consists of information relating to that period from December 31st, 21 to August 31st, 22. As of December 31st, 21, there were 827 outstanding permits in North Perth, which was really a high amount compared to what we'd had in the previous number of years. I've been doing this in this position for 8 years now, which is hard to believe. But anyway, I could see during last year that things were falling behind, even though we did have a substantial number of supplementaries last year. The amount of growth would indicate that it should have been much, much greater. Being the current legislation in Ontario only allows municipality to collect taxes for the current year and 2 preceding years, I was concerned the possibility of lost tax dollars for those property or permits that had been completed in 2019. In March of this year, with those concerns, I had a discussion with the accounts manager at Impact, and the decision was that I would send him a list of my biggest concerns, which I did in March. Nothing had happened by the beginning of May, so I updated my list, and it increased from 90 properties to 390. So I again sent them a list and believed that this would help them to investigate these permits that were so far outstanding. To this date in 2022, only 48 supplementary assessments have been issued, compared to the same time period last year of 159. The yearly totals in 2021 were 290, and in 2020 were 221. So I've had continuous numerous discussions with the accounts manager at Impact, and of course, the problem being blamed is lack of field calls being able to be made during COVID. Also, further discussions indicated that they are short of employees, which is kind of a common thing these days. They were supposed to be hiring new employees as of that took the positions as of the 1st of September. But with my experience with MPAC and their previous organization of assessment, you don't learn how to do this job overnight. In my latest update, we currently have 940 outstanding completed permits in North Perth. 185 are of a minor nature, which are not a concern, but generally do get updated on the year-end roll. We have 233 new residential units that are not yet assessed, 120 commercial buildings and additions, 187 new farm structures, and the remainder are residential additions, such as additions and renovations and things like that. These totals do not include any permits issued in 2022, pardon me, misprint. They do not include any permits issued in 2022. 278 have been issued. We also supply MPAC with a list of farm and residential properties for the secondary business, a business that has opened recently or a change in the use of a property, which is a standard procedure to make sure these things are supplemented. Supplementary assessments are checked on each date, on each update to ensure that the effective dates confer with the actual occupancy dates. A lot of these properties, if the information doesn't come through from the building department in a correct time or in a regular time, I personally go out in the field and do not call into the property, but do check certain structures. An annual review of the newly serviced lots is also completed and submitted to MPAC, because I've found that sometimes when the new subdivisions are registered, the year-end roll does not necessarily reflect those new residential lots or new commercial lots, as the case may be. Through the Municipal Connect website, I'm able to monitor the sales of new residential properties to ensure occupancy dates and effective taxation dates are in agreement. I also currently serve on as North Perth representative on the Assessment Review Board hearings for properties under appeal. And this year we have a very light load of appeals, one farm and one commercial. The impact services are supplied by two offices. Kitchener does the residential and farm. London office does commercial industrial. In closing, I would like to thank the North Perth staff for their cooperation in enabling me to do a lot of these reviews. With the update to the new system of building permits, they led me through all the details as to how to access that, and it's working very favorable for me. So that's basically my report. If anyone has any questions, I will definitely try and answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilkin. Colleagues, questions or first comments? Councillor Behrens.
Thanks, Bruce, for your report. Is it time again, and I know we've often done this before, to write a letter to the Impact Board, waging our concerns that I know it might fall on deaf ears, but at some point in time, you have to make sure that they're listening. I know we had promised that the backlog would be cleared up, and this is many, many years ago. I mean, this isn't the first rodeo that we've had with this. So I'm just wondering, is it time again to maybe send a letter outlining some concerns? And if so, I think the motion could simply read, and further that a letter is sent outlining our concerns.
Yes, it would be a real good idea. We had reached the point 3 years ago where we were getting in good shape, but it has slipped, and I know partly because of COVID, and it was difficult to do field inspections. There's also been complications when they've got a piece behind. The building department doesn't keep the records from old permits, and they were relying on blueprints and stuff from the building department for some of these older permits which weren't available. So that again has been a factor in the whole scheme of things. But anyway, that would be a good idea.
Thanks, Bruce.
Oh, well past time, in my opinion. Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I apologize. This is probably going to show my lack of understanding, but I'm going to ask a question anyway. So, in your report, you said, Mr. Wilkin, there's 233 new residential units. So, at tax time, if they aren't assessed, what do they pay?
Well,
they pay nothing, or like I
don't
understand.
For instance, on a new house, if they occupied it in 219 and we moved to 223, we can't collect taxes back for that first year. We can only collect taxes for the first year and for the current year and the two preceding years. So if it lags that far behind, and that's what I've been concentrating on, is those older permits. But no, they don't get a tax bill only for their vacant lot until the new house is assessed. And this also creates a problem because all of a sudden you may get a tax bill for 3 years' taxes,
Right.
which is not a light burden.
Right.
Could I perhaps invite Ms. Hale to offer a little bit of comment on this too? I think Councillor Andreessen's question is certainly an important one for Council's knowledge. I know the answer to this, but I think you should come forward and perhaps just comment on that flow of taxes and what happens in the absence of an impact confirmed assessment.
Yes, I think Bruce pretty much covered it. What happens is that we continue, once a property changes hands, we continue to issue a tax bill based on the assessment of a vacant lot. And then once the property is assessed, we can go back to the date of occupancy. And but that is only within a 2-year window plus current. So it does start to get to a point where we've probably lost some of 2020 as well at this point. So we're getting close to that, right, Bruce?
Supplementary to that, so through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, this isn't just a North Perth issue. there are many communities who are growing even beyond our growth rate. Is there anything, Mayor Kasenberg, from the Ontario Municipal Association or Association of Municipalities that's happening in terms of dealing with this issue as well?
I haven't personally encountered any particular advocacy from AMO, except acknowledging that, as you've said, we're not unique. It's a common problem. I certainly have had conversations with AMO about MPAC. They haven't taken that tone because I have other interests which I've pursued more at the county. But certainly, I think AMO is aware. I don't think that discounts the what I think is a wonderful suggestion from Councillor Behrens, which is to call on MPAC to become a little bit more compliant with its service standards. I think that's accountable, in fact, yes. And I think that we need to, and maybe it's not just a letter. I'm using just gently. Maybe a few of us need to sandwich board and go down to Toronto and march in front of their office to let them know that we are concerned about the service that we're receiving at this point and the accountability for same.
But advocacy through AMO would be very helpful.
I can certainly take the effort of connecting with my colleague there, who's the strategic initiatives person, and refresh the conversation, expressing concern about that. Ms. Hale wants in on this.
If I might just add to it, would be my perception that we're affected more dramatically than our local counterparts because of our growth.
Yeah.
And of course, they have to meet certain percentages. And so I think our neighbors are maybe being well taken care of. But because we're growing so fast, we seem to be the last. And as I said, this is my perception, and we will be looking at a new agreement municipally with Impact. So I think that's, to me, is something that needs to be brought forward, and certainly if AMO was copied on the letter that Councillor Behrens was suggesting, that it would highlight it. I'd also suggest MFOA as well, Municipal Finance Officers Association, because there will be others out there that are experience what we are experiencing, but their targets are in the 85% range, and that's in a grouping, and so they can meet some of their targets without necessarily covering North Perth off in a satisfactory manner.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Rothwell has a question or comment.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thank you, Fran and Bruce, for the report. First, just on this point, in terms of preparations for paying tax when you are building a house on a vacant parcel, in our own personal situation, we did have North Perth staff member, retired now, but worked directly with my wife and I to ensure that we could put money, prepay, if you will, and that was a great benefit to us, and I suspect our staff continue to do that for those that are aware, because frankly nobody wants to receive a full year or two, let alone 3 years. So I want to applaud our staff for doing that. The second issue is one that I think we have to understand is we have been in some unprecedented period here and so on. There is, as Councillor other councillors have mentioned here, Councillor Behrens in particular, MPAC has had a series of years where this has been an ongoing issue. But a different tact I would suggest, in addition to some of the comments here, is that we request the province of Ontario to amend the policies or regulations regarding the 2 previous tax years. If, in fact, we have municipalities across the province that are frankly going to be losing out on millions of dollars of taxes, the only way we are going to deal with this, and it won't be just hiring a number of additional staff people for MPAC and so on, is that we'll need probably at least 1 extra year, if not 2, to get us through this point. So I would hope that we could take that suggestion for what it may be worth, and we can put it through AMO and we could put it through MPAC. I'm surprised, frankly, it hasn't already come up, and perhaps it has come up. But that seems to be a way that at least we can work through these backlogs as we've said, we've had unprecedented times in terms of the pandemic and our own circumstance in terms of large numbers of building permits here locally. And yes, there is a huge backlog, and it has got from bad to worse. And if that is going to give us a bit of breathing room for both MPAC as well as our municipalities, then I think that's time well spent, because we can't forget that tax dollars that are not coming into our municipalities are on the backs of all taxpayers in our community. It's not just the municipality itself as the corporation that misses out. It's all of our property owners that are missing out in terms of additional taxes to help us do the things we need to do when we're working on our budgets and so on. So that's a suggestion I would make, and perhaps we can talk about that later.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. I get where you're going with that. At the same time, MPAC has a contract with us that has standards in it, and those standards should be enforced as long as they're in operation. I understand the premise, though, of adding potentially a resolution to our council package asking the province to extend that window, but MPAC has a contract with us. And yes, I understand extraordinary circumstances, the pandemic, but do the work. The work needs to get done. And if you have to hire people, well, that should have been obvious some while ago. So I have mixed feelings about your resolution, because it's kind of allowing MPAC or suggesting that MPAC could be given more license to delay and to be late and so forth.
If I may, I'm not trying to let anybody off the hook here. I'm just trying to find solutions. And I think we're all aware that legislation does take time to work through, and it may take 6 months, it may take a year, it may take more to happen. In the meantime, I fully agree with you that MPAC needs to take whatever measures it needs to do to address our issue as well as others. But don't take this anything more than trying to find a solution for us all. So thank you.
Okay. So Deputy Mayor Kellum, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kaisenberg, through you. And further to Councillor Rothwell's comment about 5 minutes ago. So what in his situation, setting money aside, is that a service that we provide? Do we contact the individual, or it's up to them to contact us and say we would like to set X amount of dollars per month or 6 months away, so they're not caught off guard?
We can't enforce anybody to do anything with that regard. However, we do try to make it our business to, actually often they call in and want to know what their assessment is so that they do know what they are needing to pay. So we do make the suggestion ongoing that they prepare for it and they set aside money. They can prepay if they would like, but I'd say that wouldn't be the norm that happens, usually if they're saving. Human nature, as you know, though, is always that, I'd say 6 times out of 10, that'd be a bit of a surprise for most of our ratepayers that get that bill.
If you don't mind, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to pick up on that question myself and just say, do we think that we could establish a uniform advisory to those who have occupancy permits to let them know that there may be tax implications down the road, and that there is a service opportunity for them to pay ahead of time, so that we're consistent with every single ratepayer on that score?
Yes, we could take that forward, and I wouldn't say we are consistent with everyone just because of contact limitations, but if we did do a generic letter that suggested that they, prepare for their assessment to be coming forward, and they have we could offer the option to prepay. I'm not sure that the take up would be fantastic, but it could be, and some might just gravitate towards it because they know they have budgets. So.
I could read the Deputy Mayor's idea coming through the thought waves in the room, and so I just voiced it to make sure that it's on the table. All right. Any other questions or comments about this from Council? Okay. Is it Council's will to invite or direct staff to send a letter to MPAC expressing concerns about its performance against the standards that are established in our contract? Just generally, I'm polling the audience, and it looks like most are nodding their heads. So let's add an amendment to the proposed resolution, if you don't mind. Councillor Rothwell, do you mind if we have a little sober second thought on the next piece, the piece that you suggested, which was sort of solution finding. And perhaps we can ask staff to come back next meeting or 2 meetings from now with some thoughts on that approach.
Yeah, I'd be satisfied with that, and we could couple the issue with AMO advocacy on this as well. So if staff could provide some additional information at the same time, then the two of them, I think, are linked together. But thank you.
Okay, thanks. I pledge that I will reach out to my contact at AMO to talk about this. Councillor Behrens?
Yes, I believe it had been mentioned, though, that we not only send it to MPAC, but we send a copy to AMO and Municipal MFAO.
MFOA, Municipal Finance Officers Association.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I've got that. I'm going to bring some wording in here. I think actually we can go even broader than that, but we'll test your patience with it. So the resolution, I think, looks like this: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives Mr. Wilkins' report, North Perth Property Assessment, September 2022 update for information, and that Council directs staff to send a letter to MPAC outlining our concerns and requesting a better performance against their mandates to our community, providing copies of the letter to MPP Matthew Ray, the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of, should we be going to the Minister of Housing, Chris? Or Minister of Finance, thank you, Minister of Finance of Ontario, MP John Nader, AMO, MFAO, if I'm paying attention to the acronyms, and all other municipalities in Ontario. I think we should go broad and see if we don't have some company. Anyone have any improvements on that? It's not perfect grammar, I don't think, but it's not bad. Any principles that we're missing in that resolution? Okay.
One other suggestion, I think the Minister of Municipal Affairs should also be specifically identified in there.
Yeah, that's...
I think that's where the direction is in terms of municipalities.
Thank you. That's why I was thinking when I said Minister of Housing, I know he's got that joint title. Okay, so the Minister, I'm writing it in my own notes here, but I'm sure Clerk Klein is getting this. Minister of Finance, Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs. All right. It's a healthy list. Anyone else have an improvement here before we actually... Okay, I see a little discussion across the table.
I believe it's Municipal Affairs and Housing. It's covered both.
Sure, yeah.
The Mayor has that.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah, okay, good. So that's the tone of the resolution. It's sending a letter off to everybody announcing that we're a little bit disappointed with service standards. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor Behrens, thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, you'll be our seconder on this one. All right, any discussion or debate on that resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay, Councillor Andreessen manually records her vote in favor, and that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for comprehensive presentation. Mr. Wood, can you have a few more words?
Just one other comment before I leave. I was in on a meeting with MPAC this afternoon, and 2020 was to be reassessment year again, update. It was delayed because of COVID, of course. And the discussion seems to be that it's 2 years away before we see the next reassessment. So nothing definite yet, but it's very outdated, I'll tell you that. And it's time, but there's a lot of other things to do too. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkin. I'm not sure I'm excited about your news. You seem to be the bearer of bad news tonight, or unfortunate news. So, oh my goodness, that's a delay that we didn't expect, because I think the province has been saying that 2023 would be the date for the implementation of the new assessments. I recognize that Councillor Johnston has entered the chamber during that debate, so I'll invite him to his chair. We're glad you're with us. All right, we have no reports from the programs department tonight as item 5.4. Did I miss what I did? Oh, all right, let's figure out what I missed here. My apologies. I was getting excited. All right. Oh, yes, the digital signature piece. I do have a note about that. For item 5.3.4, the clerk has brought to our attention that North Perth's corporate seal might warrant a digital version, and that such a move warrants an enabling bylaw to get that done. So I'm going to call on our clerk, Lindsay Klein, to provide an introduction to this matter. Clerk Klein, thank you for waving at me and being patient with me. And let's hear from you on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to members of council. So I'll just keep this pretty brief, but so the Municipal Act does require that we use a corporate seal to authenticate some of our documents, like our bylaws and our agreements. And we do currently use a seal that's just embossed on the documents. So it's physically stamped on the documents, and when you scan in a copy of a bylaw or an agreement, you can't see the seal on any scanned copies. And it's unknown whether this embossed seal was ever adopted by bylaw as the official seal of the corporation, but it has become used it's commonly used as our seal. And so, it's increasingly become more common for documents to be sent digitally, sending agreements to, say, different levels of government, the province of Ontario, and so they can't see that our documents have actually been sealed. So we are recommending that a digital seal be adopted by bylaw that can be used in addition to our existing seal. Just so when we do send our documents digitally, it's verified that it has been sealed with the seal of the corporation. And our manager of strategic initiatives has put together a digital seal that I will just show up here on our bylaw. So it's just included as Schedule A in the proposed bylaw. So just displaying there. And so the recommendation in front of council is to adopt bylaw number 117, which is a bylaw to adopt a municipal seal for the municipality of North Perth.
Thank you very much, Ms. Klein. Any questions or first comments about this report? Okay, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and through you to our clerk. In the same fashion that our current seal is only used by you as a clerk or a designated person, I see that the same provisions are in the bylaw here. How can, not the Mr. Security here, but can we be sure that in fact it's only the clerk or the designated person that would actually have access to that, or how would we go about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Rothwell. So yes, this seal will be saved only on a drive that's accessed by myself or the deputy clerk. So we will be the only ones that will be able to use this seal. And also, just a further note, we did run this by our municipal solicitor, and he is in agreement that this is an appropriate solution for that digital component of our documents.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else with a question or first comment on this one? All right, let's consider the resolution then to enable this bylaw as follows: that bylaw number 117-2022, being a bylaw to adopt a municipal seal for the municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. A little bit of wry humor in that, perhaps. Councillor Anderson, you'll serve as our mover. Councillor Rothwell as our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? All right, seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Clerk Klein. Thank you for making sure I didn't miss that. All right, onward. Programs Department, item 5.4. We have no reports this evening. Similarly, we have no reports from the Facilities Department tonight. This moves us along to item 5.6, reports from our Manager of Environmental Services. As item 5.6.1, Council is invited to award a rather large tender for a project that will transform metering of water use across the municipality. I'll call on Manager of Environmental Services, Mr. Mark Hackett, to introduce us to this matter. Mr. Hackett, I know how much work you've been putting into this. We're glad to see you before us. Please take the floor.
Before I begin, I wanted to note my appreciation to our consultant on this project, eSource. and thank them for all of their assistance and guidance through this rather complicated process of developing the RFP, and also with assisting us in reviewing the submissions that we did have. Mark Johnson and Jason Javak are in attendance remotely, and they would be available if there's any questions that arise for them. Our procurement officer and our chief operator also contributed in this process in an invaluable manner. So this project was previously approved by Council as a capital project for 2022, and it includes the installation of advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI as it's known, and as well as the replacement of our aging water meters, the majority of which were installed in 2005, making them 17 years old, going on 18 next year. So moving from our drive-by reading technology to a radio frequency or an RF technology AMI system has a number of advantages that I've noted in my report. It will provide customers with early notice of leaks or high consumption. It would provide customers with a web portal to which they could view their water usage. It will perform meter reading activities remotely rather than having to rely on the drive-by readings. It'll acquire consumption reads daily with hourly usage instead of monthly. It'll reduce trips for move-in and move-out readings. It has the ability to easily extend meter reading to our new growth areas, and upgrading our older water meters to the new water meters will capture more accurate readings. So the RFP closed on June 14th of this year, and we received 4 proposals from Mueller Systems, Neptune Technology, Wolseley Canada, and KTI Limited. Evaluations were conducted by myself and the chief operator with guidance from our procurement officer again, and also from eSource. We also had in attendance our IT department, and sorry, that was at the second stage. Sorry, just step back for a second. So in that first stage of the evaluation, we evaluated on a number of different things. The first one being the company overview, company compatibility and proposed team, the proof of ability, proposed solution overview, the requirements, and also a pricing. So following that evaluation, the top 3 bidders were asked to move on to the second stage. Those were Neptune, Wolseley, and KTI Limited. And as part of that stage 2 evaluation process, we had they were brought in to demonstrate their solutions and also their meter equipment to the evaluation team, and that also included the IT department and our utilities financial assistant. So, and at the end of the conclusion of the stage 2 of the proposal, the Neptune Technology Group Canada company was scored the highest for a number of reasons, including the solution was more than met the requirements that were set out in the RFP. The project team was vastly experienced, particularly in AMI deployment in Ontario, and the total cost of ownership over 15 years was approximately 20% less than next closest price proposal. And for the purposes of a fair evaluation, all proposal costing was evaluated by the same parameters. So once the contract requirements are exchanged, negotiated, and signed, we would move into phase 1, which would be the startup. That would take between 12 and 18 weeks, where the network plan is designed and installed. Phase 2 would be the main installation process, which would be a mass deployment of installers to install all of the water meters that are required. Phase 3 would be, and that would take approximately 20 weeks. Phase 3 would be the completion phase, which would take approximately 12 weeks, where we finalize the final installations and deployment and the final acceptance by the municipality. Then the project would be completed by the end of 2023. Neptune Technology will provide installation booking, customer service, public education, and meter installation, as well as meeting the ongoing training needs for the North Perth staff. Looking at the financial implications, the total project budget allocated in the 2022 capital budget is $1,740,400, and that includes the cost of the project consultation by eSource. And the cost proposed by Neptune came in at $1,557,081.87, excluding HST. Contract negotiations, when they take place, could result in future project enhancements, and also could include some potential cost savings as well, while staying within the approved budget. Attached to this report for Council's information was the AMI recommendation memorandum provided by eSource, which supports the municipality's decision to recommend award of the RFP to Neptune Technology. That's basically my report. I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Colleagues, any questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, through you, Mayor. Mark, this is, it's listed as capital project, but will this be coming from the sewer and water levy strictly, this funding?
Yes, it would be from reserves that we have already in place.
Yeah, so none of this will come from the general tax levy?
No, none at all.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to be.
Thank you. Any other questions or first comments? Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards the AMI replacement program request for proposal NP dash 002-22P to Neptune Technology Group Canada Co. for a total cost of $1,557,081.87 excluding HST. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan will serve as mover. Councillor Johnston will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Mark, for the report. Just confirming, this is for all of the water users, so Listowel, Atwood, Gowanstown, Molesworth, is that right?
That's correct.
All 4 of those areas. Good, thanks, I thought so.
Thank you. Any other discussion and debate at this point? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. That is carried. Now it's carried. We need 9 votes now. That's right. Thanks, Councillor Johnston. So that is carried with 9 votes. Thank you, Mr. Hackett, very much. We have no reports from our manager of operations this evening. I think perhaps Council would appreciate a 5-minute bio break at this point, just as Councillor Johnston's getting settled in. So let's resume our meeting at 8. Let's call it 8:50. 8:50. All right, welcome back. I'm just going to wait to see that we have a correct feed with our IT specialist, Simon. Simon, are you seeing and hearing us at this point? Thank you very much. Okay, let's turn to item 5.8, reports from the Development and Protective Services Department. At this time, item 5.8.1, staff of the Planning Department are taking the opportunity to notify council of a concern they have with definitions about townhomes in the current North Perth zoning bylaw and how progress in housing form has not been kept up with in our zoning bylaw, it would appear. Jerica Gilbert, a planner with the County of Perth, will speak to a recommendation from staff that we begin the process of an update. I believe Planner Gilbert is with us remotely. Welcome, Jerica, to our meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Kassenberg, and thank you, Council. Really no thrills report tonight. Basically, what happened is earlier this year, one of our local developers indicated to municipal and county staff that the current stacked townhomes definition in the zoning bylaw may be a bit restrictive. Staff have completed a jurisdictional scan, and that does appear to be the case. So with council's permission, we would like to instigate the public zoning bylaw review process just to change the definition in our zoning bylaw to be more inclusive of different heights of stacked townhouses in our municipality. This will, since this will go over the entire municipality, it will involve an ad in the local newspapers, and I would be bringing a presentation back to you folks in November 7th, I believe, is the date that was chosen. So if there are any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer them tonight.
Thank you, Planner Gilbert. Council, questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Jessica, for the report. I just may suggest you may have to look at the building height provisions in the zones where stacked townhouses are permitted. So that may also have to be amended on the building height provisions in addition to the definition. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Some advice there. All right, any other questions or first comments about this? The resolution is sort of early in the process, but here's what's been proposed, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs staff to prepare public notices for amending the stacked townhouse definition in zoning bylaw 6-ZB-1999, and presumably it will address Councillor Rothwell's insight into the matter as well. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Anstead, thank you, and Councillor Duncan, you'll be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much, Jerica. Good to see you again. Let's move to item 5.8.2. Council is invited to extend a letter acknowledging it has no comments about the proposed installation of a cell tower in Wallace Ward as advocated by Forbes Brothers and proposed by ExploreNet. Planner John Bice with the County of Perth, I believe, is with us on this one. Welcome, Mr. Bice. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg and Council. If you don't mind, I might just share my screen real quick to give you a little bit of context.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to double check that everybody's seeing that.
We can see your screen, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this report brought to you here today is about a municipal consultation for a proposed cell tower. The proponent being ExploreNet Communications. They have retained Forbes Bros or Brothers Limited. The location is 6942 Perth Line 86 in the Wallace Ward. The red star here you can see is a location of the subject lands in proximity within North Perth. You can see listable is to the east. So like I said, ExploreNet has retained Forbes Brothers Limited to undertake the municipal consultation process for the proposed communications tower installation. The tower will be located on private property, and the proposal has been sent to the municipality of North Perth with request for comment. So the ExploreNet Communications facility is proposing a 45-meter tall, light-duty steel lattice style communication tower and related radio equipment on private property. The proposed new structure is proposed to enhance internet coverage, data coverage, and capacity for the surrounding areas. And this image was created by the Forbes brothers in their justification, and it's used as an example of the style and tower proposed. Cell towers are regulated by Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, which is Canada's telecommunication protocols, in accordance with the Federal Radio Communications Act. And actually, municipal zoning bylaws may not control or limit the type or height of an antenna system or support structure for any other purpose. In speaking with the North Perth Operations Manager, no concerns regarding the proposed location or layout were identified. This image here was taken from the Forbes brothers documents, and it shows the proposed site for the ExploreNet communications tower in proximity to line 86 and the rear lot line on the subject land. So this image was taken again from the Forbes brothers mail notification that was sent out to all neighboring property owners within 135 meters of the subject property. So this was deciphered using the 3 times the length of the proposed tower calculation. The image depicts what the property will look like after the proposed installation. Mail notification was sent to the surrounding owners for the tower, and it was also, public notice was also posted in the listable banner on July 21st, 2022. The consultation report prepared by Forbes brothers has advised that no inquiries were received in response to the consultation efforts. Here's an image of the subject property from the road looking towards the north. It's recommended that correspondence be provided to Forbes Brothers Limited, stating that the municipality of North Perth has no comments regarding the proposed cell tower. And that is the end of my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Also, Jacqueline, who is a member of the Forbes Brothers company, is here on behalf of Forbes Brothers to answer any questions that might arise.
Thank you, Mr. Bice. Questions or first comments from Council? Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. I have 2 questions. One is this the only tower, or is there another tower in Wallace Township? I'll start with that question first. Is this the only tower, or is this the second one?
Jacqueline, feel free to chime in if you have any comments, but I will try to answer this question best I can. For this proposal, this is the only tower proposed. I believe there could be a tower further to towards the north, but there is no tower within the close proximity.
Just to jump in there, from my understanding, this is the only active proposal we have in the township at the moment.
Okay. So my second question is, Wallace Township is actually geographically quite a long township, and I'm curious because this particular tower is on like one end of it. And so I'm concerned about making sure that we get as much coverage as possible for the entire township of Wallace. So I'm concerned about the other residents on the far ends of the geographic area, whether they're going to have the same benefit from the location of this tower of where it's going to be. Is there a
So I can also jump in there on that one as well. Typically, towers work to form a network. So towers actually communicate with each other in order to provide enhanced service throughout an area. With this tower being on one side of the township, it naturally would provide more benefit to that side, but that's not to say that it doesn't communicate with a tower located on the other side of your township or perhaps to the north or south. And we can actually do a bit of a coverage study for these towers. We haven't done that at the moment, but they do work as a bit of an interconnected network, enhancing coverage the more towers you have.
Sorry, although I appreciate the tower going up to service Wallace, my initial question talked about the fact that we don't have any other towers. And so that's my concern, is that, we're only going to be able to service a small portion of the township, given the location of where this is going to be. And the fact that Wallace has poor service already and isn't going to have any access to the new fiber technology, it's really concerning. So I just feel I need to speak up on behalf of that ward to state my concern, because of the fact that I feel that this may not meet the needs of the township in terms of internet access.
Let me weigh in, if I might. I serve on the board of SWIFT, and of course, Wallace Township, or Wallace Ward, let's be more correct
Ward,
in modern context, did not receive a SWIFT-funded project. However, the OSSIP program has intended to fund fully a project in Wallace and Ward, and that is a joint project from the Government of Canada and the Province of Ontario. So through different means, it is expected that Wallace Ward will have fiber, as I understand it, or maybe a mix of fiber and cell radio technology. And I suppose my question to the proponents here, just for my satisfaction, is this a project that is considered part of the OSSIP award program, or is this something that you're doing outside of the boundaries of that program?
This is a private investment.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be clear on that one. Councillor Andreessen, by 2025, we will have significantly improved internet service in Wallace Ward. I know it. I can tell you that with confidence. So, okay, any other questions or first comments? All right, I have a resolution then as follows. The council provides correspondence to Forbes Brothers Limited Telecommunications Services stating that the municipality of North Perth does not have any comments regarding the proposed cell tower to be located at 6942 Perth Line 86, Concession 1, Part Lots 55 and 56, RP 44R 5828, Part 1, Wallace Ward. I'm reading the phone book again. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Behrens, thank you, and Councillor Johnston will be our seconder. Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Bice. Always a pleasure to have you at our table. Let's move forward and to our delegate from Forbes Brothers. Thank you very much for attending tonight. Let's turn to item 5.8.3. Council is invited to extend for the fifth time a plan of subdivision on a property known as the Lunar Subdivision, located at 810 Tremaine Avenue in Listowel. Senior Planner Susanna Reid with the County of Perth is with us to comment on this and bring us up to date on this request. Welcome, Ms. Reid.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kaysberg, and good evening, Council. So you will be familiar with this application. This is an application for a plan of subdivision that was draft approved in 2004. The slide on the screen shows the location of the property, and most recently you saw this property in August, at which time there was a consideration with regards to phasing of the development. Since that time, the planning department has received an application for modifying the plan of subdivision draft approval, as the applicant isn't able to meet the conditions of draft approval by the expiry date of October 20th, 2022. So the staff report provides council with three options. For plans of subdivision, North Perth Council is a commenting agency, and it will be brought to County Council as the decision-making authority with regards to this application on October 6th. As the the draft approval expires on October 20th, we needed to move it along fairly quickly. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And one more. Okay, this is the location of the subject property. So it's a 40.6 acre property, and it has a special policy in it. So I don't have a pointer, eh? There's no pointer? No. Okay, so I'm guessing that council is familiar with the location of the property. It's shown in a white with a stipply pattern on it, and it is on the east side of Tremaine, a 40-acre property. And then it is surrounded by a mobile home park designation, which is red, and the urban fringe designation in the county official plan, which is purple. The dotted line shows the line between the area that's in the County of Perth official plan, is the boundary between the Elma ward and the Listowel ward. And then, so on the west side of Tremaine Avenue, the dotted red line, the blue is industrial designation and the yellow is a residential designation. So if we go to the next slide, this is again the official plan mapping, what I just reviewed. And one more. Okay, so this is the application for the plan of subdivision, which was initially draft approved in 2004 and then subsequently has had a number of extensions of the draft approval. The application is for 167 single detached dwellings, 26 to 40 semi-detached dwellings, and 20 to 38 townhouses. So next slide. And this is the modification that council most recently considered in August, which is the first phase at the north part of the plan of subdivision. And the next slide. So the next few slides review the options that the staff report has provided for council's consideration. At this point, the planning department is requesting comments from North Perth Council to send forward to County Council. So the first option for County Council as the approval authority is that the approval lapses. So Section 5132 of the Planning Act states that in giving approval to a draft plan of subdivision, the approval authority may provide that the approval lapses at the expiration of the time period. So that is one of the options that's available to County Council as the decision-making authority. And likewise, in providing comments, it's one of the options that North Perth Council has at this time. And the next slide. So the second option is that the draft approval be extended. So Section 5133 of the Planning Act states that the approval authority may extend the approval for a time period specified by the approval authority and may further extend it, but no extension is permissible if the approval lapses before the extension is given. And again, the approval will lapse on October 20th, 2022. And then the third option is that the decision-making authority, which is County Council, could change the conditions and extend the approval. So this is the first section that I referred to of the Planning Act, as well as 5144, that the approval authority has the discretion to change the conditions at any time before the approval of the final plan of subdivision. So in order to consider the third option, what I'd like to do then is review the planning considerations for the plan of subdivision. And that's what I've done in the next few slides. So I'll just walk through these comments, which are in your planning report as well. So the first consideration, which I appreciate Council has discussed previously, is with regards to the residential density. Again, this is in the county official plan. It's a special policy area within the county official plan. So the listable official plan policies, which are on the screen now, are not relevant to the application. They're simply provided for context so you have a sense of what are the ranges of density, what is considered low density, what is considered medium density, and what is considered high density. So the density of the residential subdivision as it was initially approved in 2004 is between 13 and 15 units per hectare, which is typical of single detached dwellings, low-density residential development in Listowel. And then you can see that low-rise apartments are 40 to 75, and there's a range between those scales. The next planning consideration that's identified in the planning report, before I get to the industrial compatibility, is that affordable housing was not identified in the 2004 draft plan or any of the subsequent modifications. And then moving on, thanks Lindsay, is the compatibility with the industrial development. So the blue designation on the west side of Tremaine is an industrial designation, and there are many industrial uses on the west side of Tremaine. So as those are in proximity to the subject property, it would be reasonable to request consideration of noise, dust, and odor from the existing residential uses and any impact that it will have on the new residential development. And then continuing on, so this is the wellhead protection area mapping for one of the municipal wells. This is required through the Clean Water Act that the municipality identify the source water protection areas as required for the Clean Water Act, we require a permit for any development that happens within the wellhead protection area. So you can see that the north part of this property is within the 2-year capture zone of one of the listable wells, municipal wells. As such, Section 59 permit is required through the Clean Water Act. I did have an initial email exchange with the risk management officer at the Sauble Bayfield Maitland Valley Source Water Protection Team, and they have indicated that they don't have any concerns with regards to residential development within this source water protection area. If any commercial or industrial development would be proposed in this location, there would be further discussions, greater concerns. And then finally, determination of archaeological potential is required for plans of subdivision. And then this is an earlier air photo of the subject property. And I did communicate with MHBC as the consulting planner for this file, and this was the site of a sales area for agricultural equipment. And the MHBC planner has provided a record of site condition for this area, so there isn't any concern with regards to contamination because of the previous use on the site. So with that review of the planning issues, the staff report then lists possible conditions that North Perth Council could consider if option 3 were your preferred option, was your preferred option. And I will just also add that I communicated with the MHBC after the staff report was prepared, and they have reviewed the comments provided in the report to North Perth Council. They had some wording changes for the condition A, and are generally supportive of incorporation of an increased density into the plan of subdivision. They would request that any specific requirement with regards to affordable housing be removed. And they also have asked that the study be specific to a noise study. And then finally, that the extension be approved for 5 years rather than 1 year. And those are the planning comments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reed. I understand that Mr. Chauvin may be with us from MHBC. I'm not sure at this point that we have council's consent to hear from him directly. But why don't we begin with first comments and questions about this application, and then, as it seems prudent, if Mr. Chauvin, his attention is warranted on behalf of the proponent, we could invite that if we so desire. I've got a frog in my throat, apparently. Councillor Barnes, it looks like you have comment or question.
Thank you, Susanna, for the report. It was excellent. I personally support option 3, and thank you for explaining the 5 conditions in there. I do think that the time has come that they become accountable for both the density and the affordable housing. I know that they have requested that we not do the affordable housing aspect of it, but I think that is crucial to our municipality. Obviously, the wellhead is standard. The archaeological, no, it's not the archaeological, it's the noise and sound. You had asked for a complete study, my understanding of noise, sound, and dust, and they're just suggesting they only want to do noise. Is there a reason for that, or would you know?
Mayor Kasenberg, wasn't provided in the email.
Okay.
The detail with regards to that change.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else with comments? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm generally supportive of the whole higher density because I think we definitely need to do this to stop swallowing up viable farmland. But this is quite a step from the original plan, so I question as to whether the traffic study that was originally done is now relevant, and the servicing aspects are now relevant if we were to increase the density this much. So I guess I would need to know if those are going to have to be redone before I'd be comfortable suggesting that we go this much more density on the subdivision.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Do you have any insight into that at this point, Ms. Reed, or should we entertain other comments and you can rally back around that one later?
I did share the staff report with the Director of Operations and the Municipal Engineer. It would inform, I believe that the traffic study would be required as the subdivision was being phased, and there weren't any concerns raised in that brief review with regards to the servicing.
Okay, thank you. Did that help, Councillor Duncan?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, anyone else have a question or comment? Okay, so we have a resolution that indicates that we're going to provide comments to County Council. Do we want to provide our opinion about how this should proceed at this point in time based on the options that the planner has outlined in the report, or do we want to collect comments through some other mechanism that are input into the county's consideration? Anyone have a suggestion on this one? Councillor Andreessen?
I think we should provide comments from us as a council, so that there's direction provided to the county from us as a council.
Okay, so are we prepared to do that tonight, or should we do that in our next council meeting?
I'm prepared.
Yeah, okay. I'm seeing sort of some consent to at least considering providing this. Councillor Duncan, do you have concerns about the traffic issues before we...
The traffic issues, but I also have one other concern, and that was the suggestion that they were asking for another 5 years. I'm not comfortable giving another 5 years, considering the long history of this and the fact that this council told them the last time that that was the last extension they were getting.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Valid points. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Susanna, for the report. Yes, this has been on a long time, and I know this file very well. Perhaps it would be important to understand that things change substantially over time, and I'm in agreement with Councillor Behrens and others that we need to look at significant changes to this plan. And if we are, just to Councillor Duncan's point, if we are looking at significant changes to this plan, it's going to take time. It will be more than 1 year for them to be able to utilize this. I'm not concerned about 5 years if it's, because frankly, most plans of subdivision now have a 5-year time frame. If it was a new plan of subdivision, there's a 5-year time frame in order to complete conditions. So if in fact this council agrees that we would be looking at a revised plan that's going to increase densities such as we're discussing, as well as the completion of the required reports as necessary, as pointed out, perhaps transportation as well as the other studies which Susanna has mentioned, and servicing, those are important studies to be done. They do take time. But in the end, I think for our municipality, this is the right approach to take for the reasons outlined both by Councillor Duncan and Councillor Behrens and Councillor Andreessen. So I'm in support of option 3, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm sort of getting a read from my peers that you would be prepared to make some comments tonight on behalf of this council that can be submitted into the county's process. And I think perhaps we should test the audience for option 3 as recommended. I think is there a time limit on option 3? I don't think so, right? So option 3 doesn't put a time limit on this. Councillor Rothwell's professional experience is suggesting to us that we might need to be mindful that it's probably not a 1-year process. It could be longer than this. So if we put a 2-year time limit on this at this point in time, would council be comfortable with same? Does it make sense, Planner Reid? 2 years?
The developer is suggesting 5 years.
Right. I don't think this council, I've heard comments enough that I'm suspecting that maybe that's not all that favorable. But Councillor Behrens, please.
I think my concern is that if they do everything and county council says yes, those 5 or 6 items, including traffic, that are now required, I don't have an issue with the 5 years. What I don't want is to send a mixed message to county council and say that if they accept this and we only put 2 years in, they'll wait out the 2 years and then be back again and again and again. And it's just, I mean, if we could simply take the opinion that we say no to an extension and they have to start at square one all over again. So we're trying to meet them and compromise slightly, my opinion. So I do believe that if they require 5 years, but it needs to be said that they must meet the other conditions to get the 5-year extension. That's kind of where I'm going, and I don't know how to say that any differently.
It was clear to me. I think it was clear to me. I was interested in testing whether council wanted a timeline on this. I think we do have to put some kind of timeline or recommendation of a timeline to county council to some degree. Isn't there a requirement that they consider a timeline in terms of being the approval authority? Okay.
Yes, the county council will include a lapsing date, and if North Perth Council would like to contribute to that discussion, you're very welcome.
Okay, so there's the dilemma. I think has become clear. Councillor Seiler, did you want to offer comment on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Todd. I'd just like to add to Councillor Duncan's about the traffic. Well, the intersection there needs to be addressed. Would probably be a big priority. If the county can come up with a plan with that, how we're going to deal with that.
Yes. I'm referring to an email that I received from the Director of Operations. So the municipal engineer, BM Ross, is saying that the traffic study will be updated at the time that the density precludes that. So at the time that the residential density gets to the point where a traffic impact study is required, it will be incorporated into the phasing of the development of the plan of subdivision.
I see. I think if I'm following the bouncing ball there, then that right now there's a density, and in fact, not just a density, there's a total number of units that are sort of allowed in the current plan. And once we exceed that, or when the developer would exceed that, then the traffic study becomes unviable, and it's time for them to execute another traffic study to sort of see where it goes. Am I close?
Yes, I would say that
CEO
you're
Snell's
close.
nodding his head, so I'm
Yeah.
happy with that. That's good.
Again, my apologies because I am inheriting this application and I'm not as familiar as I might have been. But my understanding is that there is no traffic study has been submitted to date. And the discussion is at what point in the phasing will a traffic study be required? So this will be captured with a development agreement, which is an existing condition of draft approval. So that is already in place and will continue to be in place if the plan of subdivision is extended, if the draft approval is extended. So the discussion is at what point in the phasing of the development will the traffic study be completed? And the municipal engineer is saying that it wouldn't be at the first phase, it would be at the second phase. So the first phase is what you considered earlier in August. So that's what's defining the first phase. That can continue without the traffic study, and then before the second phase continues, then the traffic study will be required.
Okay, fair enough. I see the CAO holding the microphone close to him. What number do you have, Chris? 14, okay. 13, go ahead.
So, going back in time in 2004, there was a traffic study submitted with the application at that time. But obviously, as council's aware, things have changed significantly in the area. But Planner Reid did summarize basically our stance is that the first phase could proceed without the update to the traffic study because it's a fairly low number of new units, and that they would be required to update the traffic study, and phasing of the upgrades required at the corner of Tremaine and County Road 86 prior to the next phases coming online.
Okay, that's helpful. Councillor Duncan, was that a scratch or did you have your head in the air? Go ahead.
My comments were going to be within regards to the intersection improvements at Tremaine and Highway 86. And I guess, like everybody said, a lot has changed since 2004 when this was originally submitted. I think those intersection improvements need to come sooner than later, whether it's phase one or phase two. Like, we have a lot more traffic in this municipality than we had before, and it's not just in one area. So to continue to add to our traffic problems without trying to provide a solution, it seems counterproductive to me.
Thank you. I want to be sure I understand. So phase one, that can proceed without an escalated traffic study or a refreshed traffic study, whatever we want to call it. But Councillor Duncan is saying already he's got some concerns about that intersection at 86 and Tremaine, and I think most of us share that concern. The developer would have some responsibilities towards that intersection. Is that fair? Can I sort of confirm that with you, CAO Snell or Planner Reid?
I'm perhaps not as familiar with the application as I might have been, but what I would say is that the development agreement allows the municipality to specify any requirements for upgrading the road as it accesses the plan of subdivision. But I'm not sure if it would get so far as to include improvements for Tremaine Avenue.
Okay.
Sure, CAO Snell, if you have comments on that.
Yeah, let's go to CAO Snell before we get some others in here. Go ahead.
So just to be clear, I didn't review the traffic study before tonight's meeting, so I'm going a little bit by memory, but there is a requirement for the developer to contribute to any of the necessary upgrades at that intersection. And as Councillor Duncan pointed out, there's been significant background changes probably in the traffic situation in North Perth, which would not necessarily be the responsibility of this development. I also already know that the county Public Works and our operations managers have already begun discussions on that intersection as well. So sort of many contributions or contributing factors to the intersection, but I know it's being discussed at the appropriate levels for future budgeting cycles.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. Councillor Rothwell, you're next.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and I can confirm what our CEO Snell has said and Susanna Reid. So yes, there was a traffic study done. Signalization is going to be a requirement there, but again, as CEO Snell mentioned, the current situation is not the responsibility of the current developer. That's not their issue. Any new and additional traffic, they'll be paying development charges associated with any specific project associated with improvements there. So that's the way the dollars will work. And as Planner Reid mentioned, Senior Planner Reid mentioned that there will be in the development agreement in terms of any upgrades that are directly associated with this development, that will be the developer's responsibility. So there is no doubt that Perth Line 86 and Tremaine Avenue intersection will get focus and attention. That may very well be before the shovel's on the ground for any of these units if council is in agreement in terms of extension or changes and so on. But there, as CEO Snell mentioned, it's already in the works and capital works projects in terms of that intersection. That's what I understand.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rothwell. Councillor Seiler, at one point I saw you waving your hand again. Did you want to weigh in?
It's just been answered by you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Councillor Andreessen?
In terms of the timeline, Mayor Kiesenberg, I'm wondering if we should consider 4 years instead of 5, because 4 years would take us inside of the next council change versus going 5, which could be outside of like another elected council. Just my suggestion to do 4 instead of 5.
Okay, so I think we have two issues that we, in terms of comments, that we need to sort of sort out, right? The first is, do we want option 3 proposed to County Council? Those are our comments, and option 3 has been elaborated, and the only piece that's missing from option 3 is the potential of this additional traffic study, which Councillor Duncan has pointed out to us. So option 3, fine. Now, do we want to put a timeline on it? Obviously, County Council will. So, do we want to have a say in that timeline? And I think, and so I guess that's what I'm kind of polling is: do we want to attach some kind of timeline, and what does that look like? Councillor Andreessen has suggested 4 years. Anyone else want to put a number on the table? We can get Councillor Johnston to auction this off if we like. We'll go quick.
If I can comment, just looking at all the conditions we're putting on it, though, and every one of them is going to add months, if not years, to it.
Yep.
Traffic studies don't happen in 3 weeks, and I know we've already phased this subdivision, so I'm not even sure. And Alan or Susanna could comment more. I don't disagree with 4 years to get it into the next term of council, but it might be too onerous on them to do it. I'm not sure. I don't have enough planning experience.
Well, I mean, it's entirely possible, given that the developer has asked the planner for this council to strike any recommendation around affordability of housing, that they will object to the whole package that we're putting forward, right? They may say, no, we're not doing that. I mean, there's some risk here at any point as we move forward.
So what happens if it lapses? It goes back, they have to start at square one with a new plan of subdivision?
That's right. If October 20th of 2022 arrives without the County Council as the approval authority extending draft approval, then this will have lapsed, and any further developments would require a new plan of subdivision application and the according reports. So the reports that are being discussed In most situations, when we're reviewing an application and engaged with a developer in a pre-consultation process, we would be requiring the studies that are listed in tonight's staff report when the plan of subdivision application is being submitted.
Going at the much higher density as well at that point.
Yeah. But density is one matter. Affordability of housing is a second one. And they are correlated, but not necessarily causal, right?
And I think we leave the affordability in.
Okay, Councillor Rothwell?
And not to go too far down the road here, but under the Planning Act, the County of Perth, a decision, if it does not extend, that is not appealable under the Act. That is not appealable under the Act. So the request that's made, if this council makes its recommendation through to County Council, and if County Council accepts, it will give them sort of a step ahead as opposed to a brand new plan of subdivision, in my view. And I think it shows an ability of this council to recommend to County Council that we work with this developer. And not to go too far into history here, but this developer has shown a desire to work with other developers in the area. It allowed for services to go across its property to service the Village Mobile Modular Home Park for both sewer and water. So they have been willing to work with some of the other property owners to their benefit, there being the abutting property owner's benefit. So I believe that it would be appropriate to give them a recommendation as item 3 does, and I'm adamant that 5 years should give them lots of time. If they were a brand new subdivision, they'd be getting 5 years. I think that's my rationale for 5. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let me just, I think we've talked this out. I just want to check in with those who think 5 is too long. Anyone convinced by the arguments that 5 is acceptable at this point? Okay, so Councillor Behrens is. Councillor Andreessen, she's not totally happy with 5. Councillor Duncan?
If we're going to leave this all on the table, I'll be willing to recommend 5 years, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think we've got to where we want to be. Our comments then, the resolution probably should read, provides comments as follows, and for County Council's consideration, and those comments are, we recommend option 3 as presented by the planner, including considerations around traffic study.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I think intersection improvements are more important than a traffic study.
So what do you want included in the resolution?
And I think there's already a plan for the intersection improvements. I would just like to see it moved along.
Including action on intersection. But you're talking about 86 and Tremaine, which, as the CAO has explained, is sort of they're going to contribute but they're one stakeholder of many who would contribute to the 86 and Tremaine intersection improvements.
I guess what my concern is if this council is recommending densifying that subdivision and creating more traffic, then we need to make sure that those intersection improvements are done as quickly as possible.
Okay. So that might be that kind of steps outside of the boundaries of our advice to County Council, I think. CEO Snell, you want to help me with that one just before we get Councillor Behrens in here? Councillor Duncan is raising an important point, but is that the advice we give to County Council, that the intersection has to be improved as part of our big thinking about this? So go ahead.
Yes, so actually I think the current stance by both operations and engineer is that basically covers, I think, what Councillor Duncan is saying, because basically what we're saying is if this development exceeds the current density, we would require an updated traffic study. That's already basically been told to the developer.
Okay.
And so I think we're covered already, but if council feels more comfortable, they can put that.
The intersection improvements are on a different track, sort of. Isn't that fair to look at it that way?
Yes, as I think as explained appropriately by Councillor Rothwell, so this and I tried to explain this, is they're one of many contributors to that intersection, and they would be contributing to it, but they wouldn't be the only. Basically, it's a project that has to be driven by the county because it's technically their intersection, and we would figure out a contributing formula in conjunction with the county Department
And
of
we
Public
could
Works.
deal with that. If we wish to advocate to the county more strongly about this matter, we could deal with that at a next meeting. Is that fair?
That's correct,
Okay.
or through the budget process,
Or through the
yes.
budget process, thank you. All right, Councillor Burns, did you want in here?
Just quickly, I think you still want the traffic study, and they're going to probably want it too, because they want to be able to prove that their portion is not as great as what the increase from the 2004 traffic study, because of the road. I mean, we've paved through that road, we've done a lot of upgrades to Main, and a lot of traffic takes that road. So I think it's probably in their best interest to do the actual traffic study, because that's the only way we're going to be able to gauge their traffic and how it's going to affect the intersection. But I think you still need to leave the traffic study in there.
Okay, let me just, I'm making notes here. We are, okay. So I think the resolution reads as follows: the North Perth Council provides comments as follows. It recommends County Council approve option 3 as presented, including conduct of a traffic study, and that County Council extend with these updated conditions until October 20th, 2027, which is the 5-year window. Clerk Klein is waving her hand, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, so I pulled up Planner Reed's report on the screen here just to maybe facilitate ease of creating the recommendation here. So we could potentially council could pass recommendation 3 as presented by Planner Reed in her report, and we could just modify, be approved for 1 year to 5 years. And then that would include all of the additional conditions that staff are recommending. And then if council wanted to add like an additional traffic study, we could add that as an additional condition.
I'm not sure that this doesn't achieve that. Actually, what I just read essentially says, like the current resolution in the package said that we were going to provide comments. So what I'm doing now is actually recording the comments that we're providing, which is move forward with recommendation 3 is our advice to County Council, and apply a 5-year timeline.
Recommendation 3 has 1 year.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying recommendation 3, that we need to apply the timeline as an extra codicil, if you will, to the planner's comments. Right? We're overriding the planner's 1-year extension to 5. I think that's the point.
So just to clarify for the minutes, so are you going with option 3 as presented in the planning report then, or?
I think if there's is there a time limit on option 3 in the planning report? And it's 1 year, so not exactly. I think we're changing it to a 5-year window, and we're adding that traffic study as an additional requirement in our recommendation. So we're building on the planner's recommendation with adding a traffic study and a timeline that's 5 years out. Okay? Okay, we got it. All right. Okay, I think that's the resolution. I hope you sort of got where we're going with it. So can I call for a mover on this one? Okay, so Councillor Behrens and Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder. Any further discussion or debate? Let's keep this tight now. All right, so we're providing comments as follows, and we're receiving the report. Any doubt about what we're voting on before we go to a vote? All right, let's have that vote. Okay, Councillor Andreessen's manually recording a favorable vote, And it looks like that's unanimous. Planner Reed, thank you very much and for your patience with us tonight as we debated and discussed this, worked it through. We appreciate that. Thanks to CAO Snell for contributing to our understanding of this file, and to Clerk Klein for making sure that we actually make sense in the minutes. Appreciate that. All right. I think that brings to an end, if I'm not mistaken, section 5.8. That means we can move to agenda item number 6. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? I'm not seeing any expression of interest in that at this point. Then let's move forward to item 7. We have received no additional items of correspondence that require council's disposition or action. That means we can move on to item 8 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing to give a notice of motion this evening? I'm not seeing that. So let's move on to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Of course, we should check the web interface to see if anyone's still connected there. All right, there isn't. Anyone wishing to make any announcements? I can report on the weekend that I attended the Terry Fox Run, which was executed out at the Kin Station as sort of the headquarters, and a remarkable event, actually. A good proportion of runners, walkers, and riders, including some horse-mounted riders, attended, which was wonderful. And I saw an interim report today on social media that indicated they raised $28,000 for the run, which is a really exceptional event in our community. So hat tip to them. The organizing team was amazing, and obviously pulled together a great event that is doing a lot of good for cancer research. Anyone else? All right, let's move to agenda item 10. We have one matter to consider in a closed session, a meeting of council. As follows, the enabling resolution here that council proceeds in camera at 9:48, I've got PM, to address a matter pertaining to the following personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, regarding the chief building official CBO update. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Councillor Anstead will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. So those who are not invited to remain should exit the chamber at this point. It appears from the clerk that we don't have any connected online at this hour, if I understood her earlier comments. And so we will reset our meeting and make a few changes to our AV. That will give us a minute or two of change here. We should also turn off our microphones. All right. I can confirm that this council did conduct discussions per its reason for entering closed session and received information. No inherent action was taken. It was an information sharing activity, and now we're prepared to move on in our agenda as provided. So at this point, we're at item 12. For item 12.1, council is asked to endorse by bylaw the appointment of a deputy chief building official. Any questions or comments from council at this point in time? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. Thanks, Mayor Todd. Just through you to Chief Pape. Is that the correct name on our bylaw? It is? Okay. Well. Okay. So just through you, then it will solely be Gerald Moore then, as opposed to anyone else in the company. Is that correct?
Gerald Moore will act in that capacity. There may be others involved in compliance with you, but Gerald Moore will act in this capacity.
Good. Thanks very much. Okay, thank you. So here's the enablement resolution. That bylaw number 119-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the appointment of a deputy chief building official and zoning bylaw enforcement officer for the municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell's gently nodding his head. Thank you. Councillor Duncan will be our seconder on this one. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, I'm hoping eScribe is still alive. Manual votes for this. Okay, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Next, then, item 12.2. Council is asked to endorse by bylaw the promulgation of a consulting service agreement with RSM Building Consultants. Any questions or first comments on this one? Let's consider the resolution then as follows. The bylaw number 120-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a consulting services agreement with RSM Building Consultants, Inc. Be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on a mover? Thank you, Councillor Behrens. And seconder will be Councillor Andreessen. Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Let's move to item 12.3. This one is pertaining to the endorsement by bylaw of the promulgation of an agreement with the Crown in right of Ontario pertaining to a grant contribution agreement under the Rural Economic Development Program of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. And there's a kind of a moment of sadness in this bylaw, right? It reads as follows, that bylaw number 121-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the corporation. I do want to advise council that we checked with Ontario about whether we needed to update that language. At this time, they have advised us to maintain the language. So there we go. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Anstead, thank you. And Councillor Rothwell will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? And that is carried. Thank you, Council, for that. I, of course, have a draft of the confirmatory bylaw, which we execute near the end of our meeting to confirm all of our actions. It is as follows. Bylaw number 122-2022. Lots of twos there. Being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Behrens, thank you. And our seconder will be Councillor Seiler. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? And that is carried. Let us move then to the pinnacle of the evening. We have a motion for adjournment as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 10:06 Really must improve my glasses. PM to meet again for general council business on Monday, September 26, 2022 at 7 p.m. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan, thank you. And Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder. That was not debatable. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? And that is carried. Council, we will meet again in chambers for our next meeting on Monday, September 26th. We are now adjourned.